you about my new certification program on integrative medicine and nutrition for the treatment of PTSD and complex trauma. And we also address a little bit about traumatic brain injury. Those of you who know me know that, and some of you may have taken my certifications before, I specialize in integrative medicine and nutrition for mental health and all of its sequela. That means mind body integration. Now, I've been a psychotherapist for over 40 years, and one of the things that I learned is that to get the most benefit, my patients do much better when they combine nutrition, yoga, meditation, dog and canine equine therapy, a whole variety of integrative methods, herbal medicine, hydrotherapy, into their self-care program. And that's what I want to share with you a little bit about today to give you a taste of culinary medicine and herbal medicine and how we can apply this and get much better results. I am passionate about being a psychotherapist. I'm a traumatologist. I've done over 70,000 hours of clinical care. And I know that one of our biggest challenges is not just knowing how to help our clients or our patients, but actually how to help them carry out and empower themselves. So I'm going to touch a little bit on adherence too. Okay, well, let's get going. I've got a few special slides for you, and I've provided you some special handouts for free that you can download, including some fun recipes. Because what's a course without some good recipes? Okay, so we've got really the title of our course. It's a certification in integrative medicine and nutrition for PTSD and complex trauma. And now let's look at the next slide. I want to share with you a sample, really an individual who came to me and tell you a little bit about her story. And I think she's going to be very similar to many, many of our clients. And then I want to share with you how I applied the Brainbow Blueprint really to help her mood, sleep, chronic pain. Sarah is a 35-year-old professional, and she had a history of complex trauma and then repeated traumatic exposures as an adult. She experienced challenging interpersonal relationships, and that was what originally brought her to work together. We did a lot of work on interpersonal skill building, DBT, a little bit of CBT. I specialize in post-trauma therapy and narrative therapy, really telling the story, making sense of the story of what's happened to you both in mind and body. She had previously been misdiagnosed as bipolar and ADHD. And this is an important thing that I do in my training is help us differentiate how trauma manifests and can actually be disguised in other kinds of symptoms that can lead to misdiagnoses and therefore ineffective treatment. She complained of fibromyalgia, which, as you may know, is highly associated with a history of complex trauma. And therefore, as we treat the trauma, we get improvement with fibro. And then fibro absolutely responds to an anti-inflammatory diet. And I'm going to share a little bit about that with you. She had pelvic floor pain, very common in both men and women who've been sexually abused. She had a lot of anxiety. After all, PTSD is an anxiety disorder, panic, disordered breathing, and she felt dissociated much of the time. She had digestive problems that she complained about: nausea, GERD, which is acid reflux, constipation, all highly correlated and very common in complex trauma. And one of the things Sarah said to me when we first began, she said, I'm seeing so many clinicians. Everyone's telling me something different. Someone's treating my acid reflux, someone else is talking about constipation. I went to another therapist who told me to breathe, but it didn't really help my constipation and my colitis. I really need someone that can help me pull it all together and understand how everything is related. And I said, "You've come to the right person because that's what I do and that's what I teach us and support us in doing as clinicians is understanding all of the pieces of the puzzle." So I was thrilled to know Sarah. She was and is lovely to work with. She also complained of poor sleep. And if there's one thing that's important for us to help regulate when we begin helping someone is help regulate their sleep. And as we know, it's one of the hallmarks of chronic traumatic exposure. She was waking late. She had poor sleep latency, which means it really is hard for her to get to sleep. It was hard for her to stay asleep. And then she was doing either early morning awakening or then falling back to sleep and then waking up at 11 a.m. That was part of what led to a bipolar diagnosis. But as I'll share with you, we were able to tease out that it was really complex trauma. She also experienced lots of traumatic nightmares and also restless leg. Now, I imagine you've come across some restless leg. It's very highly correlated with a history of complex trauma. And one of the ways we address it in conventional pharmacotherapy is with serotonergic uptake inhibitors. But in natural nutritional approaches, we give serotonergic herbs and nutrients like tryptophan, and she responded beautifully to that. She experienced, like many people, challenges to self care. And one of the things I teach in my certification is that we need to practice this for ourselves, for our own self care. There's no separation between our work and the work we're doing with our clients in the sense of we all need to be on self care watch all the time. And I always say it gives us lots of empathy to understand how hard is it for us to do everything that we need to be doing daily to stay balanced and centered, generate our resilience, keep our stress levels down? That gives us insight to how we help our clients as well. And everybody has very different needs as well for self care. She wasn't exercising. She had poor diet, eating lots of sugar and Diet Cokes, lots of coffee, which, as you know, coffee's a drug. It's not a beverage. So use it wisely as a drug, but you use too much of it, it exacerbates anxiety and insomnia. So we explored all of this in my integrative intake assessment. And then, of course, Sarah was using a lot of fast food. And when I say using, a lot of these foods are self medicating foods. And so we explored that in the context of addiction to these very potent and yet brain disrupting flavors and chemicals. One of Sarah's goals when she came to me was to reduce the use of Paxil or even eliminate it. She was on Seroquel as well, and she used benzodiazepines occasionally for anxiety that really made it very uncomfortable in daily life. Now, she complained of weight gain, low libido, all of the very common side effects. So, let me share with you how I used the Brainbow Blueprint with Sarah and worked with her as a collaborator to define what her priorities are and what she wanted to do first and what she wanted to put off and how we were going to coordinate treatment. So if you look here at the Brainbow Blueprint, look at the top. This is about bioindividuality. Everyone is an individual, and this applies certainly to the concept of diet because are we not always facing questions from our clients about what should I eat, or oh, I found the latest fast, or I'm going to do intermittent fasting, or I'm going to drink lots of green tea, or I'm going to be paleo. Whatever it is people ask about, they often are finding this information out from friends or Dr. Google, both of whom are unreliable because the concept of bioindividuality says there's no one right diet for everyone. And in this course, I teach you how to tease out what kinds of fuel people need for their brains in the treatment of trauma and recovery from both complex and PTSD. For example, someone who is a vegetarian who really needs for their engine biologically a little bit of animal protein can be even more anxious or have panic attacks than they need to. Likewise, someone who needs to be eating more of the rainbow or the rainbow colors and is eating way too much animal protein can experience a lot more depression and pain and inflammation. And so, one of the things I teach you and I work with all my clients is who are you individually? And this is genetically based. And I've got some simple approaches to sort this out. And the neat thing about this approach is it takes outside of any ideology or any one right way to do things. It is a concept that's not one right approach for everyone. Then we jump into an integrative assessment. That means if you're a mental health professional, I teach you how to evaluate physical health symptoms and address natural means. And that really completes so much of the circle for our clients. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to collaborate with, let's say, a prescriber or a physical health provider. Indeed, I give you the tools and the language to do so. And this brings so much efficacy for our clients. Now, if you're a physical health provider, a nutritional therapist, an RD, a nurse, then I'm going to teach you a lot of the language of mental health to bring it all together because, after all, trauma is the quintessential mind, body, and spirit dysregulation. It is a dis-ease, being out of ease of mind, body, and spirit for those of you interested in incorporating spiritual approaches as well. Then we look at biological rhythms. This is a core of what we do. PTSD and complex trauma is at its core a biological rhythm disruption that affects sleep. I teach you all about circadian rhythm and ultradian rhythm. For example, did you know that not only does melatonin help regulate them, and contrary to myth, it doesn't put you to sleep, it helps regulate the rhythm. But methylcobalamin, also known as vitamin B12, supports that part of the brain in the hypothalamus that regulates the brain to help us regulate sleep. Of course, light therapy does as well. And I teach you all of these integrative methods to help regulate circadian rhythm and understand, is someone dysregulated too early, too late, and what's the genetic basis for this? If we regulate this rhythm, we regulate mood, we regulate sleep. And I'm speaking to you right now from the Pacific Northwest. And you can see the sun is just coming out. It's shining on me a little bit, thankfully. And I'm so lucky to live near Mount Rainier, where there are what are called laughing springs by local indigenous people. And the reason they're called laughing springs is because these springs are rich in lithium. And lithium also, natural lithium, not the drug lithium, though that's part of how the drug lithium works, is used to regulate circadian rhythm. So in nutrition, we have the natural mineral over the counter lithium that is very neuroprotective for the brain in PTSD. And I'll show you and share with you how to use that. So we've got lots of opportunities in an integrative assessment to serve and benefit our clients. Then, of course, nature. I just shared with you a little bit about soaking in mineral springs. I have a whole module on the use of nature. And by the way, some of you know me. I spent 10 years living and learning in the jungle of Mexico with curanderos. I spent countless months doing practices of yoga, meditation, herbal medicine, all before I did my formal training in the jungle at Harvard in Boston, where I then had a clinical practice. And it was through the use of myself as my own laboratory, testing and trying what works, but also doing this with clients that I really learned what works, and most specifically, how to do it in an artful way with each individual at whatever stage of trauma recovery that they're in currently. So go out into nature, and I give you evidence-based for this research, as well as our clinical and indigenous empirical applications. We're going to also talk about our interpersonal relationships and the latest of what we understand, also integrating this work into IFS, bagel theory, DBT, CBT. And this is another essence of this training, is that no matter how you currently practice, you can integrate everything that I'm taking really and showing you, or you can take pieces of it, just like you might go to a buffet and start with one area and then go back for more and more. So there's a lot of richness to apply working with people with sleep and mood challenges. Then, of course, the nugget of culinary medicine and giving you lots of recipes to help sleep. I've got a mocha matcha smoothie. You remember I mentioned that Sarah was experiencing a lot of anxiety? I gave Sarah a recipe that actually I adapted from a Persian recipe that uses a delicious vinegar and honey and fruit to reduce anxiety. And I'm going to share recipes with you, but also the evidence for culinary medicine for mood. And I think one of the essence that we know now is that depression and anxiety is rooted in pro-inflammatory processes in the body. And the best way to get at those is through eating anti-inflammatory foods. And I'm going to share all about that with you. Supplementation, of course, goes without saying. Diet is essential, but it's not going to be enough when we're talking about very intense dis-ease states. And I walk you through supplements and dosing, not only that you can do if your state permits, because that's going to be an important aspect of our ethics and scope of practice section, but most importantly, when your client comes to you and says, "What can I do to sleep?" you're going to be able to share. There's a wonderful product called De-Stress, and there's no side effects to it. And let's connect with your nutritionist, or let's connect with your provider and make sure this is going to be right for you. And so, whether you're going to actually carry out all of these methods or not, we are, as we know, on the front line of receiving the requests, the interest, and the questioning aspect from our clients. Please help me know what's the right thing to do for me. This gives you the language to coordinate and collaborate with others. And as you'll see, I think this is the revolution in healthcare right now, particularly in mental health, is integrating mind and body for the treatment of trauma. And if you've been in practice as I have, we know that most of our clients do have histories of trauma, often going unrecognized and untreated. So after we do supplementation, I take you on a journey of herbal medicine, what's safe, what you need to be concerned about, and how to even integrate herbal medicine into your practice, because herbal medicine can be practiced by anybody in the United States. Now, the key that I'll focus on is, are you competent to do so? And I walk you through some of the basics of how to apply herbal medicine. For example, adaptogens. One of the most important herbs for trauma is licorice root, and it's used in Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, indigenous medicine of North America. And I walk you through the science of it, as well as the art of helping someone learn how to make licorice tea to enhance their resilience, boost their mood naturally, and help them reduce some of the pharma that's causing the side effects. Hydrotherapy and detoxification is another central aspect of this training. How to use hot and cold water in a variety of ways, and then how to help our clients detoxify. We know the high correlation between addictions of all types and a history of trauma. It's about 70%, the literature will tell us. How we can support detox, and not just detox from alcohol, and drugs, but medications, how to reduce medications. And I'll share with you a little bit about how I did this with Sarah. Um, but also how to get off of sugar addiction and reduce pain and depression. So, this is an essential part of understanding the science and the art. And then we look at hormones, and I address the role of hormones and collaborating with a provider on hormones. Exercise. I always say if our clients got an hour of aerobic exercise a day, they probably wouldn't need us quite so much. And I walk you through with a special 1 hour video exercises I developed in collaboration with a specialist, a physiotherapist in PTSD and TBI that include all kinds of exercises, including some really fun balancing right brain, left brain exercises. And that's another neat thing that I wanted to do in this course is give you videos that you could actually show to your clients that saves you time, that exemplifies what you're going to teach them, but actually lets the video doing the teaching for you. And you get those to use with your clients as part of the training. Okay, somatics and body work. As you know, I began as a body worker in cranial sacral therapy, polarity therapy. That's how I began my career. And as I touched people and heard their narratives, heard their stories of trauma, that's what took me into the study of psychology and psychotherapy. And I believe understanding how to help ourselves somatically, not only self treat, for example, give ourselves a belly massage, like I taught Sarah, to aid her GERD, to aid her constipation, but also collaborate and refer to other clinicians. And what could be better than us as practitioners going out and finding who's in our community, sampling different methods that we can then collaborate and do cross referrals with chiropractors, with body workers. It's a tremendous boon for our clients, particularly as we'll see with Sarah with pelvic pain disorder. The combination of the work we did talking, with dietary changes, and with body work really helped her resolve that pain level. Breath. I'm going to take a breath right now. I give you so many methods for different kinds of breathing and humming, yoga methods, pranayama that alters right left brain function. Uh, and most importantly, as we'll see with Sarah, she was very ready to activate her right brain because oftentimes in depression, you've got an overactive left brain and an underactive right brain. And so just teaching her some simple right brain activation breathing methods helped her relax a great deal more and feel much more in balance during her daily life. Let's see, spirituality. I find that some of my clients are very interested and some are not. But those who are very prepared, and I'm prepared to work with them on spirituality. And even with my clients who are atheists, most people still want meaning and purpose and exposure to a sense of awe and reconnection. And isn't it true that one of the effects of trauma is that it severs that sense of connection to the greater purpose of being and meaning and sense of connection with others and with the cosmos. And I think this is an essential part at some stages of recovery. Generally, a later stage, what I call the third stage, and what Dr. Herman refers to as the survivor mission. I refer to it as the wounded healer. Many of us come to trauma work as wounded healers, and through our own practice and resolution of our own challenges, we learn through the cauldron of change to help others. And that's our mission. Our mission is to help our clients and help our students, help our administrative colleagues, really resolve and regulate and engage in so much healing and spiritual connection. And so in this module, I address it at any stage that someone is, or some people may say, not for me, let's move on to the next module. Altered states, I have written about for many years, and I'm so thrilled to see the revolution in psychedelic medicine, also called entheogens. Entheogens, speaking of spirituality, refers to the spirit within. And Sarah was interested in doing entheogens or psychedelic medicine, particularly psilocybin. And I went through a psychedelic medicine assessment with her. I call it a readiness assessment to really evaluate, are you, Sarah, reading about this on Dr. Google? Is this going to be the right approach for you? And if so, where will I refer you? And I'm so thrilled that I invited Dr. George Moscona, who is a psychedelic medicine provider, to participate in this course. And I've got a 1 hour interview with him as a master practitioner, along with 3 other masters in this field. And so we look at the evidence, and then we look at the role of both traditional spiritual approaches as well as medical approaches and what's right for our clients in making some of these choices. And then finally, I mentioned adherence strategies. We can have the best plan laid out and do that in collaboration with our clients. I'll give you an example. When I first started talking with Sarah, she said that one of the traumas that she'd experienced was compression against her throat, and it left her with a lifelong inability to swallow easily. And this, of course, was also related to her GERD as well. And so we did a lot of work on relaxing her throat muscles. She saw a PT who did cranial sacral work to relax. We did breathing exercises. But then when it came time to discuss nutrition, she said, "Oh, don't give me capsules. I can't really swallow pills." I said, "Sarah, how would you like a custom designed smoothie? And we can grind up some of these wonderful B vitamins for you, add in a little magnesium powder, and how about we'll make some really strong chamomile licorice root tea. We'll use that as the base, add a little hemp milk, that'll calm you down too, and then mix it up with berries and some coconut oil and fish oil. You have your medicinal drink for the day." She said, "I would love that." And so she was able to swallow this smoothie and adhered very nicely. And so part of what we want to do is not just know what to do, but what will ensure client success. And that's the personal rapport, the heart to heart, the connection that's so essential in healing with trauma. And so that's a little bit about the Brainbow Blueprint. So now let's look. I've shared with you a little bit about what I've done with Sarah. Let's go back and look at how I applied this. First thing I did is I said, "Sarah, here's the blueprint. What are your priorities? I want to know what's most important to you about your complaints that you want to work on first. And also, what about what I've shared with you most interests you?" She said, "Oh, let's not start with exercise. I have a hard time with that." I said, "That's fine. Let's start with what you feel is going to be easy and manageable for you. And then as we move along, maybe in a few months, how about if we pick up exercise then?" She said, "Oh, I think I could handle that." And so what we recognized together is actually carrying out any self-care activities was difficult. This is common in trauma and PTSD, the sense of learned helplessness, of being trapped, of being unable to really be efficacious. And so we were going to work on that in counseling as we worked on step by step achieving achievable results. And her diet, she said that was really of interest to her, is learning how to change her diet, but not too quickly. I said, that's fine. Let's go step by step. And that's also the neat thing about this course. You don't need to gather a super sophisticated knowledge of nutrition to make really important initial changes. The course will take you from very basic through advanced and sophisticated understanding, but it allows you to dip in wherever you want. And that's where Sarah was at. We didn't need to do a whole lot except say, Sarah, how about can you give up the margarine and would you like some good cold pressed olive oil and some real butter? She said, oh, I'd love to do that. I said, that would make a big difference in lowering the inflammatory process that you're experiencing. And from there, we talked about some culinary changes and some recipes, and she chose, and I titrated as we went along. If she was struggling with making change, we slowed it down. If she moved right along, we speeded it up. I said, Sarah, these Diet Cokes are doing you no good. Do you know that aspartame is very disruptive to the glutamate receptors in the brain? I said, those are the receptors that can make you anxious. How about if I give you an alternative to these Diet Cokes that you can make as a recipe? She said, oh, I'm up for that. I didn't even think about that. And that's so common with our clients. I've had so many clients say to me, I didn't even know this approach existed. No one ever told me. I said, well, now we're raring to go. You've come to the right place. And this is what gives me such great joy in this work as well. It really helps me balance out some of the intensity of the very challenging stories that I'm listening to, just like you, daily. We talked about coffee. I said, Sarah, it's okay to drink coffee, but how about not in the afternoon? Let's drink a cup in the morning. It's a mood booster, it's good for cognition, but more than that, it's exacerbating your insomnia. So let's recognize your biological rhythm can benefit from a little coffee in the morning. And then in the afternoon, let's use a little green tea, which has an anti-anxiety amino acid in it. And that way, you'll still have a little energy, but it won't hype you up. In the meantime, I'm going to give you an herbal remedy for helping you feel balanced and energized in the morning and slowly toning down in the evening. And she was really game for that and jumped right on board and had success pretty quickly. And that's the other thing about this work. And it's totally analogous to our work in psychotherapy. Some things we see results with right away. Some things take time. And that's part of our work doing psychoeducation, that we're going to slowly build for change and not demand that natural change occur too quickly, because as we know, it's often not sustainable. And so we focused on sleep and mood with Sarah. That's what she said. She said, I'm just up and down all the time. And so some of what we did with her diet was to stabilize her mood. And then without good sleep, we're all in a bad mood. It's just the nature of sleep and lack thereof. And so that was our focus to begin with. I wanted to give her excuse me, I wanted to give her some herbs to help her sleep. And I also wanted to suggest that she could then exchange and reduce those benzodiazepines, because we know that benzodiazepine use disrupts REM sleep, disrupts dream states. And if we disrupt those for too long, not only is it a potential risk factor for cognitive decline, but you don't get the release from dream states that we know is necessary for true right left brain integration. This is so much the basis of our work in EMDR or ocular breathing, ocular based right left brain breathing, and eye movement. And so I wanted to integrate all this with her. And the neat thing about this is we were able to draw from some breathing, little a yoga exercise that's keyed in for sleep, an herbal remedy, valerian hops and passion flower that would take the place of that benzodiazepine. And then one of Sarah's goals was to reduce her medication and ultimately get off of it. And so I asked for permission to speak with her prescriber, who was a little hesitant because she didn't know a lot about this approach. So I shared with her what I suggested, welcomed what she suggested, and then we worked as a team to help Sarah reduce her medication as we improved her diet, her nutrition. And then 3 months later, Sarah said, I'm ready for some exercise. And so we integrated more yoga, but this time a little bit of aerobic exercise. And I'm so thrilled to tell you that Sarah eliminated benzodiazepines, got off Seroquel, and is now on an extremely low dose of Paxil and is going just at the pace that she defines for eliminating that. And since then, I have a full burgeoning cross referral practice with this very enlightened psychiatrist who's thrilled to learn of these methods. And she said, it's not that I haven't invested in it, I don't have time for it. So I'm really glad to coordinate and collaborate with you about it. We also worked with Sarah on her digestion because you know that our digestion is essential to extract and utilize the nutrients, all those great fats for the brain that we need in trauma and traumatic brain injury. And so over time, we integrated mindfulness for digestion. I taught some hydrotherapy. I taught her a belly massage. Sarah also had a dog, and we had fun actually working with the dog to apply a little potty worker, pardon the pun, a potty worker massage to her belly. And it was just so heartening to work with her and see how she jumped in. And that's not to say that it was all straight uphill. She made improvements, stabilized, maybe backtracked a little bit, made improvements, stabilized. And that's the nature of trauma recovery. And that's the nature of the patience and the compassion that we have for our clients. So, Sarah is one of many, many clients, a little bit more complex than many, but nonetheless, an example of how we apply this work to recover from complex trauma. So, that said, I think we might have one more slide. Let's see if we do. All right. I've already shared with you some of the clinical opportunities. I think the missing piece in trauma treatment is nutrition and integrative approaches, most particularly how to integrate all these approaches and at what stages and with what type of personality. I love to joke that my OCD trauma patients are so adherent because they'll do whatever I suggest, and my ADHD trauma clients have a harder time carrying things out. That's okay. One size does not fit all. One approach doesn't fit all. And that's what I love to share about through my own clinical experience. I want you to have success with complex cases. I've got a burgeoning, overly full practice, and now I'm referring to graduates of our certificate programs. These are complex cases where you can consult on very specific issues, where you actually can develop a practice and a niche and being known in your community for doing this work and receiving short term referrals as well as long term treatment. I love supporting people to create mind, body, and culinary programs. It's especially effective working across cultures. And those of you who know me know that I also wear a hat as Director of Research at the Center for World Indigenous Studies. I work across cultures, particularly in Spanish-speaking cultures in Mexico and Central America, working with indigenous communities in the Pacific Northwest and up into British Columbia, and really value the role of culture and cultural wisdom and cultural knowledge. We also know that varieties of people have stigma around seeking mental health treatment. This is why understanding physical complaints as they relate to mental health is so helpful. When someone doesn't want to talk about their emotions, but is willing to talk about their headache, begin with the headache, begin with their digestion, and then you'll slowly build that trust and come around to mood or depression or anxiety. So it gives you lots of tools, especially when you're working with people with their stigma. And there's lots of feelings about seeking mental health. This gives you an inroad in. And who doesn't want to go to a Saturday morning event where they talk about their traditions, their food, they want to learn about nutrition, mood, how to sleep better, how to reduce pain, how to digest better, and then finish it with a wonderful shared lunch. And you can do this with colleagues, you can do it with a nutritionist. There's so many ways to put this together. And I also want to share with you a lot of the new types or the lesser types of trauma that we've been dealing with traditionally, certainly post COVID trauma, but also medical trauma, the exposure to medical experiences either early in life. We know I do a lot of teaching about veterans and of all the different wars and how to work with vets and what their particular needs are. So, yes, I specialize in interpersonal trauma, in sexual abuse and incest, but also in other areas of medical trauma. And I so love our medical social workers and our nurses who are so attuned to these approaches as well. I want to help you identify alternatives to pharma. Many of my clients coming in want alternatives, they just don't know how. And this is a passion of mine, is if someone wants to reduce and eliminate side effects, I want to help them do that in collaboration with a progressive prescriber. Develop new referral bases, collaborative opportunities. This is really about finding our joy in our clinical work. And all of these methods we can apply with our kids, our kiddos, people of all ages. I've worked with kiddos all the way to geriatric population. And you believe I'm cooking for my family as well and teaching my kids and grandchildren how to cook. And again, you can enter this being quite new to this field. And I promise you, if you're a savvy about this field, if you've even taken the mental health certification or the diabetes Alzheimer's certification, you will learn a whole new approach here to apply your skill base. Well, I think that's what I have to share with you today. I'm so delighted, so excited about this. And I have some time for questions. So let's take a look at what's come in here. And I know that Rachel may help me if I need to. Um, for those of us without any formal physical health credentials, what would you recommend about sharing information about working outside of our scope? That's a great question, Hope. My second module is all about ethics and scope of practice and how to do this. And I go into this in depth so that you feel very safe and secure and knowledgeable. We practice at one end of the spectrum doing psycho education, for example, educating our client about how drinking coffee on an empty stomach can cause acid reflux or cause anxiety. But an advanced approach might include someone who's drinking way too much coffee and wants to get off of it. And did you know that the nutrient amino acid tyrosine is a good substitute? So I teach you the spectrum of both beginner and what's in your scope, and then how you build knowledge and competency to also be within your scope. And your scope of practice is really based on your license to practice in your state. And I go into that in a great deal of detail in the course. And in some states, you can practice nutrition, practice herbal medicine everywhere. And in some cases, you can't. But here's what I always say: many of us in psychotherapy and counseling and even nursing and nutrition are not prescribers, but we better know about psychopharm in order to advise our clients. We're not going to prescribe a medication, but we want to know the ins and outs of it so we can help our clients and then collaborate with the prescriber. So you're going to find that you're going to fit somewhere along the spectrum of pieces of this that you take and integrate. You may leave a piece, you may collaborate with someone else, and that's all defined by your knowledge level, what you learn in the course, and what your state will allow. Here's a question from Tracy. Hi, Tracy. Do you have any in person conferences and trainings scheduled? This training in trauma treatment is launching, I think, this week, and we're going to have live Q&A scheduled 3 times during the course of the training, and the PESI folks are in charge of organizing all of those dates where we spend 90 minutes together going over your questions. I also have a live retreat planned in January, a live online retreat in mental health, and a live retreat in Sedona. So, depending upon what is a good fit for you, we don't yet have a live online retreat or a live in person retreat planned for this trauma training. It's all online to be done at your leisure and in your own timing. All right. Trauma treatment is never one size fits all. Oh, okay. I'm reading something from Pessy. Let's see. I'm going to move on here to see if there are any other questions. Gee, did I already see all of the questions that there are? Are there any other questions? Could be specific about sleep or mood, trauma treatment. Well, thank you, Rachel, for sharing these different links. Is this specific course being offered presently? We have just launched this week. That's what's so exciting. Thank you, Nicole. Any other questions? Maybe clinical questions, could be a case. Post-COVID supplement recommendations. I've got a client. It's a little, let's just say it's a little off topic, but let me share with you the principles. In this particular client who came to me this week, she was experiencing neuropathic symptoms, meaning lots of tingling and pain. Whenever you've got neuropathic symptoms, we use B vitamins because B vitamins, and in trauma treatment, we use B vitamins really as a core treatment because they so support neurological function. And trauma is both an emotional form of distress and a neurological form of distress. And B complex, you remember I mentioned methylcobalamin or vitamin B12, B6, all of these, all of your B complexes are very soothing to the brain, and they're soothing in post-COVID. And so it's the first place I start in post-COVID is the B vitamins and B complex. Now, the other thing we do in post-COVID is because it's theorized that the virus has entered into the cells. We want to support cellular function and communication, and we ensure there's enough essential fatty acids. And one of the things that I share in this course is how you test for essential fatty acids, and it's a very easy test that your clients can just sign up and get and test do they have enough essential fatty acids in their system or don't they? Okay. Any other questions coming from anywhere? Well, thank you. I think, boy, we spent a lot of time together today. Thank you for your patience and thank you for listening. Curious about psilocybin microdosing. Um, People are doing plenty of microdosing. People are doing microdosing in general for productivity. I certainly think where it's legal, psilocybin microdosing is probably an improvement over the use of amphetamine-based drugs. And I've treated a lot of corporate clients who are under a lot of pressure to produce, and I'm seeing a lot of Adderall and Ritalin addicts that I'm working with to get off these medications. Psilocybin microdosing is not the first place I go working with them, but it's certainly probably a better alternative. For example, I think we've got 2 states and a couple of cities now where it's legal. And I think it's the principle of serotonergic support. It is not particularly trauma treatment oriented. You need a higher dose for trauma treatment. I have referred clients for the treatment of migraines and depression and PTSD using psilocybin. There's a lot of very good research going on at Johns Hopkins and at NYU on this right now. I have a teen, this is coming from Nicole. I have a teen male client who experiences an uncomfortable feeling in his throat where something is stuck. This usually occurs when he is warming up for soccer games. We addressed anxiety and performance anxiety. That's fascinating. I am a real believer in addressing state dependent memory, learning, and behavior, and understanding where this originated. So I would do that psychotherapeutically. I would also want to help alleviate his suffering right away. And one of the herbs that I use, besides valerian and hops and passion flower, which might make you a little sleepy, you can use it during the day in low dose, is the use of kava. Kava is a very potent anxiolytic, and I might use it as a very small dose with this teen just to reduce and alleviate this anxiety while we're working psychotherapeutically and while I'm teaching him different kinds of exercises to address anxiety. But as usual, we'd want to understand where it originated. Okay. Recommendations for sleep trouble related to complex trauma. Did you know that when we lie on the right side, we quiet down the left side of the brain, which is usually our anxious part of the brain? And so just the simple act of lying on the right side of the body when you're going to sleep. And the other thing is I teach couples or parents how to do special rocking to activate vagal response. I teach them special simple massage or client self massage to activate parasympathetic dominance to help sleep. We do that in addition to potentially nutrition and herbal integration. And then soothing the nervous system for deep sleep and returning to sleep after night waking. Yeah, and there might be self-soothing through different breathing, particularly again, if we want to activate the right brain for sleep, you would breathe and open up the left nostril and activate the right brain. Now, the other thing about sleep is if you've got waking mid in the middle of the night, sometimes that's a drop in blood glucose that's associated with chronic stress and complex trauma. It's really disrupted glucose handling. And we address all of this and how to do this. But very simply, someone who's waking up in the middle of the night might benefit from a little snack before they go to sleep. I recommend something like maybe a few slices of apples, some walnuts, or I give some recipes for this as well, a sleep snack. a special smoothie with some nutrients, really working with what that cause is. And I think that's what's so essential to tease out is there can be so many causes for the symptoms that we're seeing. I want to understand what that cause is, and then we can really target an effective response. So that's a little bit to answer your question. Any other questions before I let you go on with your beautiful day? Well, I'm going to then say thank you so much for joining with me, and thanks for all of your work in the treatment of trauma and opening up your hearts. And I hope you'll join me in this course and learn about not just how to take better care of yourselves naturally, but how to get better effects from all of what you're already doing, how to really jumpstart that change, and how to engage in some of these new methods that we know are creating positive and lasting changes with our clients. Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you and hearing from you.